And this is Paul Dale. I'm your presenter for the day, and it's my pleasure to introduce the Connected Backup Service to you. What I would like to do is to walk through just a few slides to get you oriented towards the challenges that Connected addresses, and then a few slides about how it actually works. A little bit later, we'll bring up the user interfaces, and we can see what it actually looks like for end users and what it looks like for administrators. There are three fundamental business challenges that the Connected Backup Service addresses. The first is the problem of protecting the edge devices on the network. There are many employees now that have desktop systems or have laptop or mobile type systems, and these are subject to all kinds of problems in being lost or stolen or drive failures. And increasingly, a lot of corporate information only exists on these laptops and desktops. It never actually makes it back to a centralized data center environment. Now, in a centralized data center environment, the IT staff almost certainly has some control and some mechanism for backing up their central servers. But how to protect all the stuff on these mobile laptops and desktops has always been a problem. And primarily it's a problem because you can't rely on users doing anything or not doing anything on a really regular basis. So this is the fundamental opportunity or challenge that the Connected Cloud-Based Backup Service addresses. A second sort of related challenge here is the concern with data migrations. In an organization, if employees are getting new laptops because perhaps they lost their old one or there's a hardware refresh project going on, or for some other reason such as the need to migrate the operating system, this can create a huge headache and huge time commitment requirement for the IT staff, particularly if there are many users involved in this. And this problem now really has come to the forefront in many organizations because official support for Windows XP is ending in April of this year. So there are in fact many organizations that are now really looking to migrate from XP to Windows 7. And Data Protector can distinctly help with and be used as the vehicle to assist with those migrations. I'll talk about that in a little bit later. And then the third reason is the concern with legal costs and risks. There are many organizations today which actually face litigation, or at least face the risk of litigation. And one of the very first places that the lawyers are going to want to look is to see what information exists on the laptops or desktops of the employees who are relevant to a particular matter. So Connected provides a unique opportunity to not only restore data when that's needed, but also to understand what the data is that has been captured, and I'll talk about that again. If you look at Connected from an analyst perspective, it is generally recognized as being the worldwide leader in PC Macintosh protection. This is certainly true if you look at it from the standpoint of scalability. There is no other competitive solution in the marketplace today that can come even close to Connected's scalability. We have many customers with tens of thousands of laptops and desktops under protection, all under centralized administrative control. We actually have a variety of customers with hundreds of thousands or 200,000 laptops and desktops, again, all under centralized control. This is truly enterprise-proven backup and recovery. It is highly secure. It is extremely efficient. We'll talk about that, and provides very reliable backup and recovery. There are, in fact, over 4 million corporate endpoints being protected today. That number continues to grow. And it really does boost worker productivity because they can recover documents when they need to. It provides them with a variety of ways of sharing or moving files around between different devices that they might have. And as I said, it is the most advanced litigation-ready method of capturing data on behalf of users. This is my one slide to illustrate how the Connected service works. On the left-hand side there, you can see that users have mobile devices or desktops, either one. With Connected, there is a small agent that you download or install on each such device. There are a variety of ways of doing the deployment. I'll mention those in a moment. We have agents available for all the different flavors of Windows PCs, so XP, Vista, Windows 7, Windows 8 now. We also have agents available for all the different flavors of Macintoshes, so we're right up to date with the latest Macintosh releases. With the agent installed, it will then do backups on whatever the designated schedule is. It's typically once a day. And each time Connected does a backup, it implies three very important optimizations. They're shown here in the center here. They're called Send Once, Delta Block, and Email Optimizer. Those are our trademarked terms for them. We actually have underlying patents that govern these particular capabilities. Send Once is our global deduplication strategy. Connected is very careful to never send the same file twice. And this is very important in corporate environments where, in fact, many employees tend to have a lot of overlapping or common material between their systems. With Connected, the global deduplication is based on the contents of a file, not on the file name. So even if you and I have the same document, but I choose to give it a different name, that doesn't confuse Connected. It recognizes that it's the same file and will only back it up the first time it sees it and not have to back it up subsequently. The second optimization is Delta Block. This is really an optimization in time. If, for example, I have a large PowerPoint presentation and I edit it on some particular day, make some changes and save them, the next time Connected goes to back it up, it isn't going to send the whole file. It's only going to send the particular file system blocks that PowerPoint altered as a result of my edits. And again, this dramatically reduces the amount of data that needs to be sent in order to perform backups on an ongoing basis from a community of users. The third optimization is Email Optimizer. This is absolutely unique to Connected, and again is most important in corporate environments where, in fact, many users are keeping locally stored email files. In the case of Outlook users, these take the form of the local.pst files, the local mail files. In the case of Lotus Notes, Domino Mail users, they take the form of local.nsf files. In either case, the collection of messages and attachments that I might elect to save is certainly never going to match the collection of messages and attachments that you elect to save. And these files are typically quite large, and so you would think that Connected would have to back up your very large PST files and also back up my very large PST files. But that isn't actually what happens. Instead, Connected is actually able to open up and examine each message and attachment separately and then apply the Delta Block and Send Once optimizations to each message. So again, if many users all receive the same presentation or spreadsheet, many of them choose to save it, Connected is actually only going to back that file up the first time it encounters it in a PST file and not have to back it up subsequently. On any particular day, having applied these optimizations, there then is some number of file system blocks that really does need to be sent. So the final steps are to compress the data that's going to be sent and then to encrypt it using the advanced encryption standard. So the data is encrypted by the agent, it's encrypted in transmission, and it's also encrypted as it's stored in our data center vaults. And in fact, in the true cloud-based delivery method for Connected, HP Autonomy is providing the back-end vaulting. So this is a service, a true software as a service where there's no back-end infrastructure that the customer has to set up or manage or monitor or control. We are using redundant vaulting sites with our subscription service. So the agent will send the data to one of our vaulting sites, and then over our bandwidth, we will replicate everything to a second geographically separated vaulting site. So you can kind of think of this as two clouds rather than one cloud. In the U.S., we have vaulting sites in western Pennsylvania and outside of Kansas City, Missouri. They are both underground facilities. They are hundreds of feet underground. As far as I know, literally, they are the most physically secure data center sites in the country available to non-military organizations. We also have vaulting sites in Toronto and Montreal, Canada for our Canadian customers, in the UK and in Belgium for our European customers, and in Australia for our Asia Pacific customers. And any particular customer can avail themselves of as many different data centers as they need to. In fact, we have many international corporations in our client base. But there is another way of obtaining the Connected service, and that's what we call the licensed software model. This is particularly appealing to large organizations that do have their own data centers and have their own IT staff, and what they'd like to do is to set up the back-end vaulting in their own data centers. Well, we will license the back-end components to you. This is the licensed software model, and they can set up what the marketing people would refer to as a private cloud implementation. So in that case, the agents are backing up to the vaults, the data center servers that the customer themselves are providing, monitoring and managing on their own. In either model, the end user capabilities, the functionality is the same. This slide has a lot of repetition from points I've actually already talked about, but it does introduce a couple of new ideas. The first is at the top there called optimized selection. With Connected, there is a rule set, and the rule set defines what data should not be backed up, and also with include rules, what data must be backed up. And each rule set actually has two parts. It has a locked part and an unlocked part. The locked part is set up by the administrators and can't be overridden by end users. So in any typical organization, there is almost certainly some kinds of information which the IT staff really wants to be absolutely certain is being backed up. So they would put include rules into the locked rule set for that. And on the other hand, there may be certain data which they really have no interest in backing up, such as users' iTunes libraries or photo files. So you could have exclude rules also in the locked rule set to prevent that. Now the unlocked rules can also be either include or exclude rules, but those are rules which, if the administrator allows, end users can potentially modify for their own particular needs. Send once, delta block, email optimizer, compression, and encryption I've talked about already. Scheduling with Connected is done on a window basis, so you don't specify a particular time for backups to occur. Instead, the administrator specifies a range of times, a window, and then each Connected agent will wake up at a random time, a different random time each day, to do that day's backup within that window. And what we're doing here is spreading the network load around. In an office building, for example, you really wouldn't want 1,000 desktop systems all waking up at exactly the same moment, creating a huge spike in network traffic. This is an example of the optimizations that I've just been discussing. It comes from a real-world user. You can see that this particular user has over 83 gigabytes of material under protection in some 18,000 files. On this particular day, there were 23 files that were new or changed. But look, those files represented almost 6.5 gigabytes of material. But after the send once and delta block optimizations had been applied, there was only 37.79 megabytes of unique material, and after compression, there was actually only 7.7 or 7.8 megabytes of material that actually needed to be sent. So in this particular case, to maintain current backup on an 83 gigabyte file set, it only took 9 minutes and 54 seconds to do. This is very typical of connected behavior. I have Connected on my own laptop. It wakes up at some random time each day, does a backup. I never notice it. It never interferes with me trying to get my work done. There's a variety of ways of deploying the Connected agent. In fact, I can identify 3 of them. First is what we would call user self-registration. And in Connected, we refer to the administrators who are responsible for the management and the deployment as a technician, so I'll probably adopt that term from now on. When a configuration is created, a URL is generated with that, and the technicians can hand that out to their user communities, and then each user, at whatever time is convenient to them, can visit that website, register themselves, download the Connected agent, and get their first backup started in that fashion. And this is in fact very typically what is done in smaller company or smaller settings. But in larger organizations, the IT staff almost has some way of pushing out updates or new applications to the employees' laptops. And the Connected agent can be pushed out in whatever manner they're using. So there's a silent install option whereby the Connected agent can be pushed out and then silently installed without the users having to even be aware of it, without the users having to do anything. So it's a completely provided for service for them. The Connected agent can be included in the master image that an organization maintains. So for example, if I were to get a new laptop here from HP, it would come with whatever the current deploy image is that HP thinks is appropriate for employees. The Connected agent can be included as part of that master image so that it is automatically deployed on any new or replacement laptops that an organization issues to its employees. And in this regard, I want to point out that doing that doesn't affect the cost of the service, because Connected is quite unique in terms of how we bill, and I want to go over that. I'm not going to talk specific dollar amounts, but I do want to make sure that the algorithm is clear to you. And it's very simple. What we bill on is the number of active seats. It doesn't matter how much data any particular user is backing up. nor does it matter how much data in aggregate an organization is backing up. The only thing that matters is the number of activated seats. If the connected agent is part of many, many different laptops, and not all users are actually going to use the connected service, or at least not use it right away, it doesn't cost anything for the software to be there unless and until that particular instance of the agent is activated. And by the way, I should point out that there's no charge for restores, so users can restore as much data as they need to from time to time, and there's no cost for that, unless they request the data to be shipped on media. We do have a media shipment option, and there is a service fee associated with that. Let's turn to data retrievals. There are a number of different ways and mechanisms by which users can get their data back. The first of them is what we would call local retrievals. So with the agent that's installed on their laptops, there is a local user interface. You'll see that shortly. And with that, users have a self-service method of recovering whatever files they need to without having to enter a support ticket or call the help desk. We also offer a web-based retrieval mechanism so that users can use any web browser on any system where they can run a web browser to retrieve files that have been backed up by Connected. This is a very nice feature. I mean, if a salesperson goes on a sales call, doesn't have their device with them, suddenly needs something, they can retrieve it, again, using any browser capability that is available to them. If I go home at night and need a work file from work, I can retrieve it onto my home system. We also have the ability to retrieve files onto smartphones and tablets. These are what we call our mobility apps. So we have retrieval apps available for the iPad tablet, for the Android tablets, and for the Android smartphones. I have a screenshot at least of these coming up in just a moment. And then finally, as I mentioned, we have a media restore option where we can ship data back on CDs or DVDs. There is a small service fee for doing that. These are a couple of screenshots that might be a little bit hard to read of the mobility apps for Android tablets and iPhone tablets and Android smartphones. They're very slick interfaces. These apps are absolutely free. You can go to the iTunes Store or the Google Play Store, search for Autonomy or search for Connected Mobility, and you'll find them. So users can download these and install them. It allows users to cache on their smartphones or tablets a collection of documents that they have retrieved from some of their connected backup sets. It allows them to email them, view them, print them, whatever other capabilities are available on their device. They are retrieval only. We don't back up from smartphones. Another topic that I mentioned at the beginning is data retrievals for migrations. There are some PC tools out there that supposedly help with migrations, but they are certainly not very scalable and create a lot of difficulty for IT groups to use. The method of using USB sticks to move files around is certainly very error-prone and time-consuming. And as I said, support for XP is ending, so this migration topic is really top of mind for many customers and prospects today. I want to point out that Connected is very well suited to assist with these migrations, or to be used as the basis for doing migrations, because the connected backups create a very manageable repository here. And so data can be then restored to, migrated to a new system, either in totality, in its whole, in various increments, or on a file-by-file basis. And in fact, end users can do this on their own. So it means that once the IT department has the new basic account set up for a user, they can basically turn the new laptop over to the user, and then they can quickly gain access to any immediate files or data that they need to or is important to them without having to wait for an entire migration of, hundreds potentially of gigabytes to be done by an IT staff for them before they actually ever get possession of their new machine. So this creates a very efficient way of minimizing the amount of downtime to a user associated with a migration and minimizing the amount of IT staff time that's required in order to perform migrations. And you can see that this becomes increasingly important as the scale of the migration or refresh project increases. So, imagine you had 1,000 or 10,000 users that were suddenly involved in a migration. And it's very, very nice to be able to use Connected as the basis for performing those migrations. Security is a major topic with Connected. It is used, as I said, by some of the world's largest organizations. We are protecting the laptops from very senior executives in very large firms. You can be sure that security is top of mind there. There are, in fact, a variety of different authentication mechanisms available for use with Connected. The first is what we would call user self-registration. So as I said, if a URL is handed out to a user and they go to that URL and register themselves, they'll create a password for their account at that time. If the technician has pushed the Connected agent out to them, then the first time they access the Connected interface, they're going to have to change the pre-assigned password to one that's relevant or meaningful to them. And Connected does integrate with the Active Directory through LDAP. So again, this is very appealing to large organizations that already have an Active Directory environment set up. Connected is more than capable of using that as the basis for authenticating users to the service. And more recently, we've introduced integrations with SAML version 2, which allows Connected to participate in an organization's single sign-on environment. And to illustrate just briefly how that works, in this particular case, the Connected agent doesn't solicit and doesn't collect user identification, user names, or passwords itself. Instead, what it does is make an authentication request to the organization's identity provider. Now, this identity provider can do almost anything in terms of how it authenticates users. It could do fingerprint scans or retina scans, or integrate or talk to Active Directory via LDAP, or put up its own authentication screens, whatever the case might be. And what Connected gets back are tokens that allow it and provide it with the necessary access and authorization that it needs for the functions that it's going to perform. The instance when this is typically used is an organization that is or has implemented a single sign-on environment, where there's a single identity provider that's used for many different applications, and Connected can be one of those applications that participates in the single sign-on implementation. Other notes about security. We have provided and conduct every year a number of third-party validations. These are very important because it means that our customers don't have to spend the extensive time and effort that would be required to perform a comprehensive security review. There are two in particular here. The first is PCI DSS. This is the standard that was developed by the major credit card providers, so any company that processes, transmits, or stores cardholder data must comply with this. Probably even more important is ISO 27001. This is really the international security management standard against which an information system can be certified. It allows organizations to meet really all of their security-related regulatory compliance requirements with one single certification. There's about 11 different areas of investigation associated with this examination. Everything from source code reviews to process reviews to employee background checks to physical site reviews. There's many and very comprehensive set of examinations that are done for this. Connected also participates in Safe Harbor, this agreement between the US and the EU that regulates the way companies handle personal data, such as names and addresses, particularly of European citizens. As I mentioned at the outset, one of the unique opportunities with Connected is to be able to understand the data that has been captured. And the way that's done is by integrating Connected backup sets with the Autonomy IDLE engine. IDLE was the core piece of technology developed by Autonomy when it was a separate company. You can think of it as sort of the world's most differentiated enterprise-wide search engine. And the thing that really sets it apart is it can actually understand the meaning, the content of information that's available to it for indexing purposes. So for example, if you were asking about dog nutrition, and there are documents out there that talk about feeding or what you should feed a golden retriever puppy, IDLE would actually find them. It certainly does keyword searches, but it can actually, as I said, understand content. Now, IDLE is not part of the Connected service. It is sold and supported separately, but through the auspices of a connector, the backup sets that Connected has made can be interfaced to, made accessible to, the IDLE engine, so that the backup data from the employees' laptops now becomes discoverable. So even if employees should get wind of some impending litigation and go around deleting files off their laptops, you still have backed up copies of those those are still discoverable. And in fact, the two major uses of this idle engine really are for e-discovery purposes and for be able to impose legal holds on documents so that you know you can retain information for as long as a legal matter requires. This is just one slide that does illustrate that legal hold and e-discovery are sort of the two primary business motivators for employing idle in conjunction with connected backup sets. Well, what I would like to do now is do some demos for you, let you see what the connected service looks like in real usage. So give me just 1 second here while I change context a little bit. All right, you should now be seeing a largely blue screen. This is a remote desktop system that I have logged into already. And you can see on the lower right hand side here in the taskbar there's this shield, sort of blue color with a silver slash through it. That is the entry point, if you will, for the local connected agent for a user. If I were to right click on this, you can see my top choice here is to back up now. In fact, if I've worked on a large spreadsheet and saved it and I want to make sure that it's backed up to the cloud, off-site protected right now, thank you kindly, all a user needs to do is come in here and click the Backup Now button. So users can do additional backups beyond whatever backups have been automatically scheduled for them by the technician. The other thing that users typically do for themselves in sort of a self-service fashion is to retrieve things. So if I click on the Retrieve option here, it will bring up the local connected agent with the Retrieve tab or Retrieve mode activated. And you can see that it's displaying for me folders that are very familiar to me, my desktop and documents and pictures and so on here. But I can retrieve files from any files and folders that have been backed up from my system. And in fact, in my particular case, this is a US demo site, so I actually want to go to the US demo user here. There's several different users that share this particular device. And I can browse around and choose whatever it is that I might want to back up. I think in the marketing folder, yeah, there's a couple of files here available to me. So if I needed the connected backup data sheet, for example, I could just put a check mark there. And you can see there's a little V5 here. What this means is that Connected has 5 different versions of this particular file. So Connected keeps backup history. The way that works is Connected will keep the 10 most recent versions of any file that it's backing up, but it doesn't keep versions that are more than 90 days old, more than 3 months old. So to sort of illustrate that, if I have a Word document and I do edit it every day, then I'll probably have 10 different versions available to me going back each of the last 10 days. So if I needed to revert the file back to the way it was 7 days ago, I can do that. On the other hand, if I have a month-end spreadsheet and I only really edit that spreadsheet once every month, I'll probably only have 3 or 4 versions available to me because the versions that are more than 3 months old will have dropped away from the connected backup sets. If I have a file that I delete by mistake and then I want to get it back, I have at least 3 months in which to do that because we'll keep, as I said, at least the last version of any file for at least a 3-month time period. If I have a file that's completely static, it never changes. It's always available to me to restore because it is part of every backup set. Now, we didn't have to transmit any new content for it, but it is nonetheless part of every backup set. So if I were to click on the little V5 here, it will display the 5 different versions for me, so I could choose which one it is that I wanted to restore. Now, users don't always remember where they put stuff, so we do have a little find box up here. So I can, search for something. So if I wanted to look for all the documents that have sheet in the file name, I can do that. And in fact, I could restrict my search to particular dates, or I could restrict my search to particular file types. So if I was looking for PDF files, I could do that. And when I click search, it will find, in this case, it found the 5 different versions of that data sheet. So if I wanted one of those, I could put a little check mark there. You'll notice that the button on the upper right hand side has now been activated in orange color here. It's the Retrieve Now button. So if I go ahead and click that, it will ask me where I want to put the file. The default is to put it in my Documents directory, but I could put it back to its original location, or in fact I can browse around and choose where I might want to put it. And I very often do that for demo purposes. I just put it on the desktop so that we can see it. And when I'm happy with that, I can simply say OK. and we'll kick off the retrieval here. It'll take probably just a couple of seconds for this to complete. Okay, so that's it. The file came back. You can see it here. It actually showed up on my desktop. Now, as I said, the other thing that users typically want to be able to do is to retrieve files when they don't actually have access to their laptop system. And we have a web-based way of retrieving files. That's what we call MyROM. So each user has access to what we call an account management website, and they need to authenticate to do that. Now, in a sort of standard username password world, connected with solicit a username and password, I have a little demo script set up here that will automatically enter my username and password and log me in. And here you can see the different options available to me. I can view my history, I can retrieve files with MyROM. I have the permission to order CDs or DVDs. Now, very often a technician will turn this privilege off for end users because there is an extra service charge associated with it. Now, appropriately authenticated technicians can always order media on behalf of users if they need to do that. And I could reinstall the agent, I can edit my profile, but what I want to do is to click on MyROM option here. And so this is Internet Explorer, but it has a very familiar interface. It looks very much like what we just saw. I can browse around through all the different folders and documents that have been backed up for me and choose what it is that I might want to recover. We have a find function, so again we can search for things based on metadata, based on file name if I need to. And I have the choice of what versions I want to restore. By default we'll restore the most recent version, but I could say I want to restore as of a certain date, or I could say show me all the versions, and then I could choose which one it is that I want to recover. What I would like to do now is to bring up what we call a support center interface. This is the interface that technicians use, that administrators use to manage the overall deployment. Again, it is web-based. Again, you need a username and password to log into this. Now, in this particular case, it's a different username and password. It's an administrator's username and password. This is the support center interface used by administrators. There are a number of different tabs or contexts here shown on the left: counts, report templates, reports, and configurations, and I'll very quickly introduce them to you here today. Under accounts, I could enter a particular account number if some user was having trouble and I wanted to give them some assistance. I can use a % as a wildcard character, and it will show me all the different accounts. I've only got a dozen of them here. If I were to click on one of these, I can get more information about it. It's an active account. It's running version 8.8 of the agent. I could run some diagnostics on it. There is a report writer built into Connected. We give you about a dozen different reports right out of the box. You can see them listed here. But you don't have to like or use our reports. You can create new reports of your own. In fact, I'm looking at the Create tab right here. So I could give my report some kind of a name and description, and then I can specify what the criteria are for information that should be shown on the report, what fields or columns I want to display, what sort orders I want to use. When you do run a report, it will appear under the Reports tab here. So if I look at, I don't know, the account list is an example of one. This shows the different accounts, their names, the status, what computer names, what community they're in, and so on. Now these column headings, again, are just ones that we've chosen for our default version of this report. All of this can be set or changed to meet a particular organization's reporting needs. The thing I want to spend the most time on is this notion of configurations. It's a word that I've used a couple of times. And in a larger deployment, it's almost certain that there would be several different configurations created. You know, perhaps the backup behavior and rules for the executive should be a little bit different than the backup behavior for the finance department, and maybe engineers or marketing people need something a little bit different than other employees. So a configuration is a way of capturing a whole collection of different parameters and choices about how backups should occur. In fact, in each configuration there are 4 different parts. The first part is what we would call the profile and website settings. And so we give you some defaults to work on here. So this set of controls governs how that account management website will appear and behave for end users under any configuration that's using this particular profile and website settings. So I'm not going to go through all the different fields and functions here today, but I'm just going to sort of highlight a couple things. If I were to click on the options part, you can see if we scroll down to the, or look at the bottom, account management website options here, whether users should be able to download the agent, whether you want to show a service license agreement, whether they should be able to order media, and whether or not they should be able to use that My Roam capability. I mean, there are some users in some organizations that have very sensitive data on their laptops, and the administrators want to make absolutely certain that it could never be retrieved or restored using a web browser onto any other system, so they could turn the My Roam capability off if they wanted to. The other three parts of a configuration are done separately for PCs and Macintoshes. I'll open up the PC one here. The first is what we call agent versions. Now, you don't create your own versions, but in a real production setting, you'd see that we have the agents available in many different languages, at least a dozen different foreign languages. So if you needed a French or a Portuguese or German version of the agent, all of those are available to you. We also have agent settings. This is quite a list of different choices that you can make. Again, I'm not going to walk through all of these, but if I were to click on the backup tab, for example, here, if I look at the second here, backup mode, you can say how aggressive the connected agent should be. Under aggressive mode, if it wakes up at a particular time for that day's backup and there's no network connection, what should it do? Under aggressive mode, it will keep retrying. Under passive mode, it will say, well, okay, I'll just simply skip the backup today and try again tomorrow. Down below here, under backup limits, you can see that by default we have a 30 gigabyte limit per user, but this can be changed. And a technician can make it a larger number, or in fact they can make it, by unchecking the box, they can make it completely unlimited. And as I said, no matter what they do here, it doesn't impact the cost of the connected subscription service. The fourth and final part of a configuration is the rule set. So if we looked at, I'll just open up one of the defaults here. Here you can see there are two tabs at the top, the locked rules and the unlocked rules that I mentioned earlier. We're looking at the locked rules right now. And you can see there's some exclusions here. So we're excluding safe boot files and Windows PC health files. There's also some user-created files rule here. This is our nomenclature for an include rule. So if I were to click on that, I can see a definition of this rule down below here. So this is a rule that says for all user profiles on the system in the directory Microsoft Search Data Config, including all subfolders, do back up files whose name is schema of type text. There's a very comprehensive set of default rules that we have created that we think make sense for many, many users. But you don't have to use these, or you can modify them to suit your own particular needs. If I scroll down a little bit here, you can see we're excluding pagefile.sys and temporary internet files. If I scroll down even more, in this particular default rule set, we are excluding audio files. So this would prevent the backup of things like iTunes libraries. So this rule says for any folder, including subfolders, don't back up any files of type AA, AIF, MP2, MP3, WMA, all the different audio types appear here. Now if I go to the unlocked rules, again, they can have either excludes or includes in them. If I scroll to the very bottom of this default set, you can see there's an include rule that says do back up the Microsoft Office document type. So this rule says for any folder, including subfolders, do back up files of type DOC, XLS, XLA, PPT, all the different Microsoft Office document types. And then the final thing that you do after having created these different parts is to put them together to form a configuration. So if I click on one of the configurations here, you can see I give the configuration a name and some kind of description, and then via drop-downs I can choose which of the various agent versions I want to associate with this configuration, which of the several different agent settings I might have created I want to use in this configuration, and what website settings I want to use, what rule set I want to use. And then when you save and deploy it, a configuration ID is assigned, and you'll also get a URL here. Now this big long URL is what you would hand out to end users if they were going to register for themselves as a method of getting the connected agent deployed. But at the top, I also have a download choice here, so I could download the installation package associated with this configuration, and then, as I said, push it out to a community of users or include it in a master image that I'm going to use to image new laptops with, whatever choices might want to make with it. Having seen the demo, people often ask about what the future holds. In fact, some very exciting developments are in progress that we call Connected MX. You can think of Connected MX as meaning connected mobility extensions. What we are going to do here is two significant things. First, we recognize that many users today have more than one device. They might have a laptop, they might have a smartphone and a tablet, and what they would really like is the ability for the files on these different devices to automatically be synced with each other. That's the first thing we're going to do with Connected MX. We're going to move to a completely user-centric model where any user can have multiple devices and they can have the option of them automatically syncing one to the other, so wherever they make changes, the changes will show up on the other devices that they have. The second thing that we're going to do is we're going to introduce intelligent policy-based mechanisms for sharing information between users within a department, within a division, within a company, with the exterior world. And we're going to adopt the same policy-based ideas that we have in the Connected Backup product today. That is, central administrators for an organization need to be able to properly protect, to be able to audit, to be able to understand how the company's information assets are being distributed, how they're being shared. So unlike the sort of free-for-all sharing that is typical of a Dropbox type user, with the Connected Mobility extension, administrators will be able to control who can share and what can be shared and how long it can be shared, so that employees within an organization can still gain the productivity associated with effective and easy sharing, but under the control and administrative guidance that an organization needs to enforce. Connected MX is not going to replace Connected Backup. The Connected Cloud-Based Repository will be the repository for Connected Mobility extensions. These are just extensions to the Connected Backup service. We will continue to have that. We'll continue to have backup history, the ability to recover different past versions of files when that's needed, but we will have these additional capabilities coming with Connected MX. A few customer stories. This is a consulting firm. They have lots of mobile users. Clearly, protecting mobile devices is very critically important to their knowledge workers. Boston College is an example of a customer that was very interested in Connected because it does both Macs and PCs, and in academic environments, PCs and Macs are both in use typically. This is a final slide of just some takeaway messages about Connected to remind you of some of the things we've talked about today. It is the highest scalability, enterprise-proven backup and recovery method, pure cloud-based backup and recovery method available in the world today for PC laptop protection. It does provide visibility, accessibility, and control over endpoint devices for the administrative staff, for the IT department. It is very policy-driven, as you've seen, so you can create different configurations with different rule sets to meet the needs of different communities of users within an organization. It's very secure. It is multi-tenant solution, so that from a subscription service standpoint, it's a true multi-tenant secured environment. It really does allow the IT staff to free up time and resource. They no longer have to worry about whether laptops and desktops are being properly protected. There's obviously all kinds of reporting so that they can monitor or track any particular exceptions or users who might be having some difficulty from time to time. We have a variety of different deployment methods, all appropriate for organizations of both very small in size to the very largest in size. And it is uniquely able to integrate with the IDLE technology to perform e-discovery and legal hold types of services for organizations that need that type of capability. This is my final slide. It's a resources slide. You may not have a chance to write all this stuff down today. I do just really want to call your attention to one thing, which is my email address. I am pdale@hp.com. It's a nice 5-character email address. And if you want any type of follow-up, if you have questions that occur to you after the fact, I am most interested in receiving your general feedback, your questions, comments, anything that you might want to send me. I do my best to respond to emails as quickly as I can. And again, it is a nice 5-character simple email address for you. I thank you very much for attending. I hope this was useful for you, and I hope that I hear from some of you. So take care, everyone.